In today's episode, we get to travel to the Kingdom of Jordan and talk with my friend, Dan Russell. As the Global Wrestling for Peace Executive Director and Ambassador, Dan is a prominent figure in international sports diplomacy, humanitarian action, and community leadership. With a profound connection to wrestling since his youth, he has achieved 2 World Cadet Champion titles, 4 consecutive state high school championships, and 4 NCAA championship trophies. In 1995, Dan won the prestigious Podbunny tournament in Perm, Russia. Sorry for messing that name up. Earning the title of unofficial champion of the world. Transitioning into coaching, Dan has served as an Olympic solidarity instructor for 8 years in Palau and the Federated States of Micronesia, and was an Olympic coach in 2004 in Athens, Greece, the birthplace of the Olympics. Representing the United States at multiple World Wrestling Championships, Dan has left an indelible mark on the global wrestling stage. Having shared his expertise in over 60 nations, he has become a key advocate for the sport, utilizing wrestling as a powerful tool to foster cultural understanding and bridge gaps between communities. You do not want to miss this conversation. But before we jump into this conversation, if you find this episode encouraging, would you do me a favor and hit that subscribe button from wherever you're listening from? That simple thing ensures that you never miss an episode, and it helps us get good news out to others. Now, on to my conversation with Dan. Dan Russell, my friend, thank you so much for jumping on this podcast with me. I'm so excited to talk about wrestling and what God's doing through wrestling.
It's a great honor to be with you, and I love talking about the sport of wrestling and the way it opens up some really unique and creative doors to build relationship and impact in local communities all over the globe.
Yeah, it's so good. And I just love the uniqueness and intricacies of how the Lord kind of knits people together, because we met in the hills of Montana at a camp, and you were telling me the story about Wrestling for Peace and what impact it has had on the globe. And I was just taken aback and so encouraged, because I use sports as a form of building relationship and building bridges and healing poverty. And there's a lot of the same similarities. So before we jump into all of that, I usually ask all of my guests, when I come to visit their country, what's the first thing that you're going to feed me?
So that is a great question, because in our culture where we're at, every taxi cab you'll get in, they will ask you about the food.
Really?
And so this is my kind of place, because food is a central part of the culture. It is the place where people gather. In fact, today I was just invited to share in the national Palestinian dish with friends and family. Last night I was sharing in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan's national dish with another family, where we sit and enjoy a meal that is absolutely exceptional. There's not a food I have not found that I don't love here. And I'm the heaviest I've ever been in my life. But
Me too.
I think 2 things that are important in cross-cultural work is, one is learning to understand the language. I think you can't understand the way people think and the way that they see life and their worldview without understanding language. Language helps shape what we see. And the second thing I would say is food. And I have the food part down. My language skills are a work in process. I've worked very hard at it. I can talk all day, and people just laugh at me. So
That's awesome. Yeah, there's just something so special about sharing a meal with somebody, and it breaks down walls for sure. So can you tell me just really quick, and just so our listeners kind of know who you are as a person before we jump into what you do and what God has asked you to do, can you give us a little background about yourself, your family, married, kids? Who is Dan Russell?
Been married for 34 years. My wife also was an athlete, and we met actually in the training room in university. So she understands what I'm doing with sports. She competed at a very high level. I could brag about her for just a minute. She was a 3-time first-team All-American volleyball player. She was NCAA Player of the Year in volleyball, and she was captain of the national B team and was selected for the A team which is the team that would compete in the Olympic Games. And as we were just a week or two from moving to join the national team, we found out we were pregnant with our first child. So we have a son and we have 3 daughters. We had 4 kids in 5.5 years, and they are
Wow.
incredible. They're all now grown and out of the house, and walking through their journey in life. And they live stateside, and we live over in the Middle East, and we love where we live. We love the people, the culture, and of course, as we just talked about, and we love the food.
That's amazing. I love that so much. So, can you talk to me? I know you just said a little bit about culture and that you are living in the middle of East, and so I want to be respectful of no details, which I know you won't do, but what's that culture like? What's kind of the spiritual climate of the Middle East and where you're living? And then we're going to jump into wrestling for peace a little bit and how God has invited you to use that as an answer to the spiritual climate that you're in.
Well, I would say first, I think there's a lot of things that are misconceptions when you're in the West. What we see in the news, what we see in the stories. First and foremost, you've got a people that are deeply, passionately loved by God. And so when I walk around and I look at the people where I live, these are descendants of Abraham. So when you look at the people and you look at the culture, you look at a people that I believe God has promises for, and promises that have been fulfilled and promises yet to be fulfilled. And so, I moved here as a learner, as here's a people that God loves, and there's something that they have that I think I've been invited to learn from them and see from their perspective, understand in a way that they're understanding. I find a people that are misunderstood a lot, people that I think have a passion and heart they want to know God. And I tell them all the time, they work so hard to find God's favor. And you don't have to work for God's favor. You already have it. I see it. I see the hand of God on this people. So it really is an honor to be here. I believe it's a place that I've been invited to for a number of different reasons. And a lot of it was because of things God wanted to do in my own life. There were things he wanted to reveal in me that needed to be dealt with. And so for me, this is a land where I think God has invited me to a place of healing and also a place of growth, and to be able to witness what he's doing. Because we know this true. He was here long before I arrived, and he's going to be involved long after I'm gone. And so I think the key is this invitation to see what he's doing, to catch his heart and to catch his passion for a people. The longer I'm here, the more we've been here now we're in our 7th year. And wow. It's just been an incredible, incredible journey, incredible blessing.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I love how you said that. God is already there. And I believe that that's a common misconception of people when it comes to missions work in the international level is I'm bringing Jesus. And it's like, no, you're not. We get to partner with what he's doing in the world. And so I know that you have kind of a unique thing, right? In your area, you're not launching a church. You haven't done a church plan or anything like that. But God has asked you to help people wrestle through life, not just physically. I was looking at your website earlier, and I love the hashtag that's on there that says everyone wrestles. And you get to come alongside and partner with these people, adults, young men, young women, and coaching them physically in wrestling, but then also it goes so much deeper than that. So I know this is where we're going to sit for the next few minutes, even longer than 20, however long it takes. But tell me about Wrestling for Peace. Let's start with, what is it? And then how did you get involved?
So Wrestling for Peace is, I think, a big idea that, I've been doing this for about 9 years. A little bit of background and how kind of got started, and then I'll talk about what it is today and what we're believing or dreaming for in the future. Obviously, I was a wrestler. It's where I get these knobby ears, and it was a great sport for me. It was a sport where I felt it was a sport in God's hands. It was a tool in my life to help shape and form me. And, you talked about our hashtag, everyone wrestles. I believe this: if you're on this side of eternity, you're a wrestler. Because the truth is, life is hard. Life is a struggle. And to wrestle is to struggle and overcome. So how do we as the wrestling family come alongside those in the wrestling match of life and encourage them to overcome. About 9 years ago, I was invited to work with the Sahrawi people in Algeria, and they'd invited me because the this people group are descendants of Beni Hassan, and if you look at the tombs of Beni Hassan in Middle Egypt, there are hieroglyphs there that were done thousands of years ago of wrestling techniques we still teach today. So
Wow.
here's this ancient wrestling civilization that were pushed out of their land, and they were living in the most uninhabitable part of the Sahara Desert in Algeria, outside of a city called Tindouf. So I was invited to come in because this is the first generation of young people that weren't wrestling. And
Nice.
here's someone from the wrestling family that there are things that I have learned, things that have been taught to me that are part of this rich history that this people group were a part of bringing to the world. So
Wow.
it was a way to honor them, a way to honor their culture and their history, and to encourage young people to be involved in wrestling. So I took about 5 trips into Algeria. I was on a call with the State Department because Algeria is almost impossible to get into as an American. It's a difficult place.
Hmm.
And this people group, the Sahrawi people, are a protected people. They don't want outsiders coming in and changing or influencing their culture. They want them to be able to keep their history and their traditions and their heritage. Again, beautiful people, incredible
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So I was invited into this. I'm on this call with the State Department. And as USA Wrestling was listening to what I was doing, they called me back and said, "Would you be an ambassador for Wrestling for Peace?" And I said, "That sounds amazing. What is it?" And they said, "We don't know. We were hoping you could help us figure it out." So 9 years ago, we began this journey and processing what might this be. And talking with my wife again, my wife understands sports. She understands what it takes to be a champion, and she also understands the passion that's been in my life and how wrestling has been such a significant piece of my life. And so we began praying about what we would do, and we thought, well, we'll establish a base. And I was coaching at the time with our U.S. national team. I've got to be at camps. I've got to be at a lot of things with USA Wrestling. So it made sense that we'd build a base in the United States. So my wife
Hmm.
and I sold everything we had. We got in a car and we started driving. And we were on the road for 400 days looking for where we might build a base.
My goodness.
Um, we were in a different bed almost every night, meeting with different people, going to different places. We had in the state of Ohio, I had somebody that offered us a house if we'd built a base there. And my wife said, I just don't feel like this is what God is saying. We had somebody in Georgia, beautiful log cabin on a lake. They said, "Hey, if you build it here, this is yours." And again, my wife said, "This is not the place." And we had a place in Iowa, a big camp that was on a river. It had cabins, it had a gym, it had a house, it had offices. It was a perfect location in my thinking. I got excited about all these places. And again, my wife said, I just don't think this is it. So a little bit of background how I ended up where we are in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. We were in LA, and we were talking about where we might build this base. And my wife said, maybe we need to think overseas. Maybe we need to look, and maybe it's not supposed to be in the US. That made no sense to me.
Hmm.
And so my rebuttal was, the only place that would make sense to me is Jordan. Now, the reason I said that was because my wife and I had been to Jordan one time, and we got in the biggest fight of our marriage. So for me, it was ending the conversation. And for her, it was, that's interesting. And the next morning was meeting with some friends, and they looked over at us and said, "Would you guys ever consider moving to Jordan?" And that's where I knew I needed to start paying attention. And I will share with you what happened in the midst of it is, as we said, we'd pray about it. I had this crazy dream. And in this dream, God showed me this Roman column. Like, we got these Roman pillars all over Jordan. And in this column, at the top of it in red was the number 43. And in the dream, God told me to go sit at the base of this column. So I'm sitting there, and I'm frustrated because I don't know why I'm sitting there, and I'm not understanding. As my frustration was rising, people started walking by in my dream. And I just knew I'm supposed to do something here. So I jumped up to my feet and I said to God, "What do you want me to do? I'm ready." And in my dream, God said this to me: I told you to sit. So I sat back down and I'm getting more frustrated, more disappointed, more discouraged. And I said, I don't understand. And this is what God told me in the dream. He said, these people that I'm showing you all feel like they're 43 miles on the wrong side of the promise. We live 43 miles from Jerusalem. And in this dream, he says, this pillar, this thing that you're sitting under is my promise and my presence. I'm here. And I woke up.
Wow.
And so what I've come to understand is God invited me here not because he needed me to do anything. God doesn't need me. He loves me. And I think that's true about all of us. He doesn't need any of us. He loves us. And yet he's also made us part of his plan. So there's this invitation to come. And what I've learned is the invitation was to come and to sit in a place of his presence and promise. Because as he was showing me these people that felt like they're 43 miles on the wrong side of the promise, they were a reflection of me. There's a lot of my life. There's a lot of my ministry. There's a lot of things that I've done that were trying to prove myself. You know, growing up as a child, I was abused. I was abused by a neighbor in a way that 5-year-olds should never be abused. I was physically abused by an uncle. I had a number of things that happened at a young age my uncle used to beat 3 lies into me. He'd make me say it to him every day, and he'd beat me with this. And that was, I'm no good. No one will ever love me, and I'll never amount to anything. And I'd have to say that to him every day. So there was this place in me that I wanted to do something great for God, but really what it was me trying to prove myself or to outrun the lies that had taken root deep in me. So my wife and I, when we had been to Jordan that one time, those lies had really taken hold, and this belief that I'm no good. I mean, I've tried so hard. I've done so much to prove myself, and you do all these things for God. And at the end of the day, you still are dealing with these lies. I don't measure up. I'm not good enough. God brought me here to confront those things in me. So when I look at a people that are working so hard to please God, to find his favor, that was me in my own expression and my own relationship with him. And I know that God needed to get to the root of that in me. And as he's done that in me, that's also the opportunity to walk beside other people and for them to begin to understand God's heart, his passion, and his love. So Wrestling for Peace was this big idea from USA Wrestling, an initiative. We move here and not sure what, okay, what is this? You don't need me to do anything. And yet I'm a type A, let's go. And having to sit and listen and learn and hear and learn to receive the love of God, have walked in incredible, I'm going to say it again, incredible favor, not because of something that I've done, but because, again, the kindness of God is beyond our understanding. And the kindness of God towards me has been just how he loves me in the midst of all of my stuff, and then allows me the opportunity to go and be a part of something like Wrestling for Peace. So, Wrestling for Peace, we've done projects all over the world. I base out of Jordan, but our work is global. I live here because this is where I was invited to come and sit, learn, and see, and again, see a reflection of the things that I think God wanted to do in me. But as I invite God into those places, it's amazing how it has an impact on the people around you. And then last year, USA Wrestling said, we would really like if you would take Wrestling for Peace and form its own NGO. And if you could lead it, we will be your partner. But we feel like we're holding this thing back.
Wow.
Then they asked if what we would do is look at all of our age group world championships in the sport of wrestling. And if we could take our number one team competing in those world championships and go do something outside of the gymnasium, outside of the arena, outside of the sport of wrestling, and go help somebody in that community or some program in that community where you see people that are in the wrestling match of life. We've gotten to do some amazing things. This last year, the under 17 world championships were in Athens, Greece. When we were in Athens, we got to take our world team. We went to the Elpida Children's Hospital. We brought toys for the kids. We were able to give a donation to an organization that has been feeding refugees. They did 50,000 meals last year for refugees.
Wow.
So we were helping help them fund this next year. And then we also went to a place in the poorest area of Athens, a very difficult place that is really struggling. And we found a center there that was really helping kids learn to read and write. And we were able to get them a year's worth of school supplies.
Wow.
And as this idea of everyone wrestles, and how can we as the wrestling family come alongside and encourage you in what you're doing that you can overcome? So that was our first project. Then we went to Bulgaria, and in Bulgaria, we bought a bunch of gym equipment. We put it into some elementary schools. We hired a coach for a year to bring physical education into these schools. We brought 60 young kids together to the World Championships. We ran them through a training session. We let them be the stars. We let them be the champions. And our world team was there cheering them as they were going through their little exercises, and watching parents and community people watch these kids do their thing. And then we took all the kids into the world championship, into the arena where they all sat together, and they got to watch the opening ceremonies, and they got to watch some of the wrestling matches. And then at the end of the night, we threw a huge pizza party for them.
Wow.
And so that was in Bulgaria. Then we went to Hungary. And in Hungary, we went to the Bethesda Children's Hospital, where we gave toys to all the kids in the hospital and the rehab. And they're doing incredible work. But then they also said, you know what we really need is not toys. We've got a burn victim unit that really needs scrubs. And they told us how many they needed. So we were able to buy all the scrubs they needed. And then they said, what really helps these kids going through rehabilitation is dog therapy. They said it helps with the emotional, with even the physical part of the healing, because it gets kids moving and active when dogs are there. So we were able to pay for 6 months of dog therapy for the kids in the rehab center as well.
Wow.
Which was just an amazing thing. Then in Serbia, we were there for the U23 World Championships, where we took our Greco-Roman world team, and we went to a rehab center where men are battling addiction. And it was, again, an opportunity to come alongside somebody in the wrestling match of life. And we brought in medals that we hung around their neck. And watching our world team go find these men and award them these medals. And we told them, this isn't because you finished the fight. These medals are to remind you that you're a champion because you've chosen to face the fight, to face the addiction, to step in the ring and do battle. We want to honor that.
Yeah,
And
haven't given up.
the world, it was incredible. And then the world team, they left. I stayed for most of the day with these guys and shared with them a little bit of my journey and story. We sat and we had meal together, and there are several guys who wanted to meet individually with me. And the thing that has stuck with me is I was there all day, and the guys did not take their medals off. They meant so much to them. They're just wearing them around. They're recognized for being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to do the hard things, be willing to say that they needed help. Where I find that we as a people have connection is not in our championships, titles, and trophies. Where we find connection is in our struggle. It's in the battle. It's in the difficult challenges. That's where we have commonality. So it's in that shared struggle that we connect. And I shared with the men, I said, all of these wrestlers, it's not their titles and their trophies and their medals that has made them who they are. These guys have all been through hard things. They've all been thrown to their back. They've all been through really difficult things. What makes them special is they just keep getting back up. They keep showing up.
Yep.
And, the truth is life is hard. And, the words that I find most encouraging in ancient wisdom was by Jesus when he said, in this world, you will have trouble. That encourages me because guess what I found on this side of eternity? A lot of trouble. But then he says, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And it's in that we find hope. That's where I find hope. And so, Wrestling for Peace it's a simple idea. It's a beautiful idea. We get to partner with the best wrestlers on the planet. I mean, the guys I was working with this year, most of them will be competing in the 2028 Olympics, or they'll be battling for the spot for those Olympic Games. But we don't just go with our Team USA. We partner with the local country's team as well. And we try to do this thing together outside of the wrestling arena, but in the wrestling match of life.
That's an
so
amazing
this next year.
Yeah.
This next year, we're looking at U17s is going to be in Baku, Azerbaijan. The U20s is going to be between two places. It might be in Bahrain or it might be moved to Bratislava, Slovakia. The U23s are going to be in Las Vegas in the United
Wow.
States. And then our senior worlds are going to be in Bahrain, and the world veterans will be in Amman, Jordan. So we will be doing projects in all of those places, partnering with local countries. It's been a blessing that I didn't see coming. I think that the willingness to take the time to sit in God's presence and his promise, to look not just what's going on around me, but to begin to look and say, God, what is it in me that you're wanting to do in me? Those are the places that I think he wants to work and does his best work. It's when we open ourselves up to those places and invite him there. So that's been a little bit of the journey. We're excited with what we're doing. We're excited with the year to come. We've got a big gala coming up on December 6th in Washington, D.C. at the Army Navy Club, just a couple blocks from the White House. We're going to celebrate some people that have done some extraordinary things through this thing we called Wrestling for Peace. And part of the big picture for me is these projects we're doing is kind of on the 30,000 foot level. I mean, we're taking in the best of the best. I mean, these are our best guys and best girls at their age and their weight class. And we're showing them how they can have purpose beyond the podium. But our hope is, and we're developing a thing that we're calling Wrestling for Peace in a Box. And what we want to do within the culture is that every kids program, high school program, middle school program, collegiate program would catch this idea that as wrestlers are not afraid to do hard things. Wrestlers understand what it is to struggle. And it's not just about the struggle, but it is learning how to overcome. How do we in our local communities see where the need is, and can wrestlers be people that say, let's go do something about that? And so, we really see it as a movement that can begin to happen, that will grow beyond an organization. It becomes just part of the culture of what it is to be a wrestler. And so we're excited about that. We're excited about seeing something take shape in the midst of this.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And it's so true. I think most people like to do things. We're doers, and sitting and resting and listening is hard. And I feel like you are just an example of what God can do when we're like, okay, I'm going to sit. I don't really want to, like everything in me is fighting it, but I'm going to sit. I just, from our history and our relationship of friendship, like I know stories that you haven't told on here of, because you sat and rest, the Lord blew open doors for you that you probably are like, I've got no business being in this world and in this situation. But the Lord's like, I've got my hand of favor on you because you sat and you waited. And that's an encouragement, I think, to me and to others that are listening, of we have no idea what God is going to do once he, like you said, works that in us, what he can do in every sphere that we enter in. So my next question for you, because as you were talking about, you've got the best of the best. And I deal with athletes all the time. And in the world, I know that athletes can have a little bit of an ego because they know they're good. And so how have you seen transformation? And maybe if you could share a couple specific stories, even if you don't name names, of maybe these guys that have come in with that pride of like, I'm the best. But then as they've served and as they've put others before themselves, how have you seen that change and transform? Or has it been a hard process? Like, do you have guys that have bucked it maybe in the early days and now it's just part of culture, so they know, if I'm part of the national team, this is what I'm doing? So can you speak to that a little bit of kind of like, how have you seen guys change by putting others before themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, one of the things to be an elite athlete, in some ways, you learn to be incredibly selfish. You become very self-aware, self-focused, and you almost have to be to compete at that elite level. I got to coach at the 2004 Olympics. I was an Olympic solidarity instructor for 8 years, working in Palau in the Federated States of Micronesia, helping them develop grassroots sports. So sports in itself, if it's not used as a tool to teach and train, actually can do some things that can cause damage in the way that we're developed and the way that we're shaped. So I think looking at wrestling as a tool is really important, a tool that can help shape and model, again, purpose beyond the podium. It's not about the titles, the championships, and the trophies, but what am I learning in the sport that will apply to the whole of my life? I remember it was 3:36 in the morning. I'm in Anatolia, Turkey. And I'm sitting next to our world champion who's would go on to become also win two different weight classes in Bellator and MMA fighting. This guy is one of the best. And it's 3:36 in the morning. We're in the hotel lobby getting ready to take our long flight home. And he asked me this question. And when he asked it with such sincerity that I knew it deserved a response, but it was 3:36 in the morning. He said, Coach, he said, how did you finish strong? And I ended up writing a book about it. And I titled the book Finish Strong, the Dan Russell story, as an answer to his question. When the book was published, the very first person I gave that book to was this world champion. And I was just with him in Serbia because he was coaching our U23 world team now. Wow. And we talked about that story. One of the things that I found, especially with Olympic champions, world champions, when you're done competing and you're no longer in the limelight, if your identity has all been wrapped around a sport and that's who you are, and now you're not, you will see athletes go through some of the deepest depressions. I remember Mark Lenzi, an Olympic champion in diving. We were all training at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and paper came out 2 years after he won the Olympic gold, and they said, what was it like to win the Olympic gold? And his response, I think, is a real picture of what we're talking about. His response was this: what did it feel like winning the Olympic gold? He says 2 years later, he says, waking up at 2:00 in the afternoon after an all-night drinking binge. He said, when I won the Olympic gold medal, and I woke up the next day, I realized it was just another day. The emptiness on that backside. So 2 years later, they're interviewing because he was going to go back and try to make another Olympic team. Because here's something that happens to us sometimes in athletes is we get to this point and we think, well, that didn't do it. So maybe if I do it again, then. And it becomes this endless cycle of going after things that ultimately are pretty empty. I remember when I was in college, I'd won my 4th NCAA Division II title. I was second person in U.S. history to do that. I had the complete set from my freshman to my senior year of the title. And I remember getting my taxi cab to go back to my apartment. I could not wait to add my last trophy to the collection. I had the full set. And I got home and I put my trophy up on the wall, and it was the loneliest night of my life. I cried all night long, realizing if my life is about this, it's not enough. It's empty. And I watch athletes that go to those top levels walk through that process of they spent a lifetime of discipline and dedication and self-control, commitment. They've denied themselves of all these other things so that they could win this prize. And then they get the prize and it's collecting dust.
Yeah.
And so coming to that place of how do we finish strong? How do we get to a place where we're going after those things that last far beyond a trophy that ends up in a box in a garage someplace? And that's part of what we're doing with this program with Wrestling for Peace is we're taking our elite athletes and we're showing them something beyond the arena as part of a way to help with the dialogue. They don't know that they're going to be there yet, but there will be a day when they have to hang up the wrestling shoes and they've got to figure out who they are outside of the sport of wrestling. Those are challenging times.
Yeah. Yeah. And to try and figure that out in the midst of wrestling. Because like you said, you don't, like, I don't know. I remember when I was playing basketball, like you know that the end is going to come eventually, but like you don't think about it in the moment because you're in the moment trying to do your best. And so that's a unique thing that you guys as coaches and leaders get to help people navigate. Yeah, it is definitely interesting. I think the world of athletics where it is its own unique thing that a lot of people don't fully understand. You know, it's like, oh, it's just a game to most people. And it's like, no. Like this is life. You know, I didn't play at the collegiate level. I got injured in high school, but I remember even at that level, like it was life. And I was like, in my mind, I was going to go play for the WNBA, but like that injury, it did. I felt that where it's just like, what is going on? Because my whole life was in that ball. And so now I'm grateful that I get to do definitely not on the scale that you're doing, but a little bit of what you're doing, of just using sports as that bridge of saying, hey, it is good. And I tell my athletes all the time, it is good to be good at your sport. Like it is, there's nothing wrong with being great at what you do, but that's not it. It's also this. It's also being great at life. And so with that, do you see, and maybe it's already in existence, but do you see the idea or the concept of wrestling for peace shifting into other sports? So like basketball for
Absolutely.
peace or football for peace, or
Yeah.
what might that look like? Or does it exist already? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah, I see what we're doing. Right now we are very focused on the sport of wrestling, and we've got an opportunity leading up to the 2028 games, helping with our very
Mm-hmm.
best athletes as they prepare for those games. But we're also preparing them for beyond those games. And
Correct.
again, that purpose beyond the podium. But we also see our organization as something that we believe will have an impact in the sports world. So Serbia, for instance, in 2027, they are hosting the World Expo. Now, the World Expo just finished up in Japan this year. They had 20 million visitors from around the globe that came to the World Expo in Japan. And so Serbia is preparing for this big World Expo, and I read that they're going to put $18 billion into this. Now, to
Wow.
put that into perspective, the Paris Olympics, they spent $7 billion. So
Wow.
this is a very significant thing for a nation. They're really wanting to, I think, build their identity through this. And their theme is the power of sport. So we've met with their committee, and as an organization, Wrestling for Peace, we're going to be one of the featured programs at the World Expo in Serbia in 2027. So we're already working through towards that end, because what we see is we believe we've got a message that transcends just the sport of wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
but that is also our little niche that we work in,
Yeah,
that
for
I
sure.
think we have some understanding, but it applies to things outside of us. So, we're excited about that. We're excited come the Olympics, what that might look like. And then
Mm-hmm.
thinking through, okay, post Olympics, where are we going to go from there? And, I had a quote that I had read out of a book from Pliny the Elder. Pliny the Elder was a first century Roman army, navy commander and kind of a philosopher. And he said something that really caught my attention. He said, when Rome can't build something beautiful, they build something big. I
Hmm.
heard God speak to me, Dan, your whole life you've tried to build big. Would you build beautiful and just trust me for the big? See,
Wow.
I thought I was going to be an Olympic gold medalist. That was my focus. I worked 4 to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week for 21 years, got to the top, ranked number one in the world a year before the Olympics, and the wheels came off. And
Hmm.
I didn't understand. I said, God, I don't understand. I want to do something great for you. And God's word to me back has something I come back to again and again and again. He said, Dan, I don't need you to do something great for me. I want to do something great in and through you. And you need to learn the
Hmm.
difference. And
Hmm.
again, even back then when I heard that, I didn't see how so much of my life was out trying to prove those lies wrong, prove my
Mm-hmm.
value, prove my worth, trying to do something great. And God takes these times and he pulls me back and says, no, it's not about what you can do. This is about what I want to do in and through. And it's a place of surrender. It's a place of sitting in his presence and his promise, and then walking out those things in faith, knowing he's doing this. This is his thing.
Yeah.
And I'm simply being invited to be a part of something that God's doing. And what a beautiful place to be. I don't have
Yeah.
to strive. I don't have to push or work. I just need to be obedient to hear what he's saying and respond. That
Yeah.
is walking, I think, the journey with God in a way that he's invited us to. And I get ahead of myself.
Me, me too. It's interesting just how the Lord ties things together, I think, for me. But you are such an example, just to honor you a little bit, of an example to people who hear the Lord and then they want to do what they didn't hear, in the sense. But you're like, here's the opposite: is hear the Lord and then do what you heard. But also you have to do. I've encountered people in my life that are very much of just like, I just want to sit at the feet of the Lord. I just want to sit. I want to hear. And I think there's a time and place for that where we have to only sit. But then he says, get up and work. We have to do the thing still. We have to put our hand to it. But knowing, like I just actually was just reading in Zechariah, and a couple weeks ago was able to give a message about this, about the whole, not by might, not by strength, but by my spirit, says the Lord. And so it's like, okay, not by you still have to do a job, but you have to know that it's not your strength that's actually going to get this done. And you, I think, are such an example of that, of like, okay, I heard the Lord and we're going to go. And then if I don't know what to do, I'm going to stop and I'm going to listen for what the Lord says to do next. And then we're going to go do that, and you're going to do it hard. So thank you for that. As we kind of come to an end here, because 45 minutes has flown by, which I knew it would. I could sit and speak with you and your wife all day long. What are some ways that people can best support you personally and like partner with you, but then also partner with Wrestling for Peace? And actually, you know what? No, I want to ask a different question first. Sorry. The question I want to ask first is, if there are people listening that maybe want to start some sort of a program like this, maybe like Belize. I know we have a wrestling team. I don't know much about it, but I know that it's small because Belize is a very small country. But if we were wanting to kind of develop that and grow that, you had mentioned briefly a grassroots program. How could we do that? Like, is there a way that we could partner with Wrestling for Peace to develop something in our nation, whether it's Belize or some other nation that might be listening?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when I look at who we are and our organization, and then you see the need, and the need is so big. Big part of our heart is the development of the sport, because we see what the sport can do in the lives of young people. And so, the way that I've looked at it is I can't fix everything or solve everything. In fact, but I can help here. As you help one, it's 1+1 equals more than 2, but it's the willingness to step in. And an example of that, one of our first projects was when Hurricane Harvey hit Rockport, Texas. Billions of dollars worth of damage. It was devastating. And so we thought, well, we're wrestling for peace. What can we do? And we drove through Rockport, and it's overwhelming. And we ended up saying, though, what could the wrestling family, could we help with one family? And so we decided we can't do all of it, but we can help with one. We drove through, we saw a family that were out in the front yard, and they were cleaning up debris from their home had been destroyed, and they're out doing something. We said, okay, there's our family. We don't know them, but that's the family we're going to help. And so we ended up rebuilding their home. We invited them to a wrestling event, and we handed them the keys to a home that not only been completely rebuilt, but everything was paid for, mortgage free.
Wow.
And it started small. We didn't know, we had no idea what we could do, but we took the first step, and then we ended up helping with another home. So we ended up helping with 2 homes simply because we didn't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed with how big the need was. We just looked and said, okay, what can we do? We'll do that. And I think that learning to do what you can do and trust God, again, build beautiful, trust Him for the big. What's the beautiful thing that you can do? And just trust God to take that as a seed. So when I look at developing programs, we get calls all the time with help or needed help in places that are struggling or developing. And that's the question I come back to. What can I do? And in the process, what can they do? And we just start that process of building beautiful. And we're just going to trust God for the big and see what he might do on the backside of it. But I think anytime you're doing a work where you're helping people in need, it can be overwhelming if you start looking at the largeness of it instead of just coming back down to how do I build beautiful and what's one thing that I can do, and I can do it with my whole heart and to the best of my ability. And you start there.
Yeah, it's encouraging. That's encouraging. And so on that note, now how can people partner with you? And do you have a newsletter? Do you have, I know you've got a website that I'll put in the show notes below, but just
so that's probably
what is
the
a way that
quickest
people
and easiest is going to wrestlingforpeace.org. We instead of sending out newsletters, we have a news section that you can click on. It just kind of gives the stories of what we've been doing, what we are doing, and there's a place where people can donate if they want to donate. The other place that I would encourage, that I would love, is hearing stories from people of how they're using sport in a way that makes an impact in their local community. I think the ability to tell those stories, the more of us that are stepping in and doing something that might seem small and insignificant, it's those stories that encourage somebody else to say, well, if they could do, I think I could do this. And then you get enough people saying yes. Now something really, really big is happening, but because you Just focus on doing the one thing that you can do. And so I love hearing the stories as well. I think that encourages me. Of course, everything that we do, all of the projects that we're doing require funding and support. But I think, more than a paycheck, it's finding everyone being challenged with what it is that they can do. And some can write checks. Some don't have that capacity, but they have other ways that they can give. And so encouraging to step in with what you can do with where you're at. I'm also of the belief that wherever our feet go, God goes. And so wherever I am in the world, I just need to simply look down and I see my feet. And if my feet are here, then I know God's here. And okay. And then you walk in faith. And this whole journey has been a faith journey. And it's been incredible, and God is faithful.
Amen. Amen. So how can people share those stories? If there's someone that has a story, is it through the Wrestling for Peace website? Do you guys have a Facebook page, an Instagram page? Like, how can people connect with Wrestling for Peace?
So we do have an Instagram page called Wrestling for Peace. And there is a place on our website that there's a contact email there that you can share those stories with us. And I just, those things are encouraging to me.
For sure. Awesome. Well, I will link all of those down below. Is your book available for sale also that you had mentioned earlier?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Finish Strong, the Dan Russell story.
Awesome. I will put a link down below as well. And hopefully people will pick that up. I know I'm going to go try and find it on my Kindle when we're done.
There's also an audio.
But as we wrap up, also an audio. Awesome. My dad loves audiobooks, so maybe I'll do that for Christmas.
Perfect.
But as we wrap up, Dan, I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here with us. But we have covered so much and you have encouraged us so much. But is there anything that you really kind of wanted to say that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
I think just a great opportunity to be on this, to share a little bit of our story and journey. And I'm grateful for you opening the door and giving me a call and say, hey, can we talk about Wrestling for Peace? And it just also would just underline what I said when we started, and you had said to it as well, is that all of us wrestle. All of us go through struggle, and God's with you. I love the picture that we get from Psalm 23, where it says that he's going to take us through. So for those of you that are listening that might be struggling right now, you're in your own wrestling match, I would say you're not stuck. Trust God. He will walk you through. But it's about walking, and it's a relationship, and it's you and God together walking through the challenge that you're facing. He's with you. You're not alone.
Amen. Don't pitch your tent there. Keep going. Keep going. That is amazing. Well, Dan, I thank you so much for being on this. I'm going to go ahead and let us wrap this up. But like I said, I will put everything in the show notes, and y'all just pray for Dan, pray for his wife as they're based in Jordan, but traveling around the world with Wrestling for Peace, and just pray for wisdom and direction and just for open doors, because God is moving through wrestling and I love watching it. I love that I get to watch it from this position and be friends with you guys. So thanks again, Dan, for taking time to be with us today.
Grateful. It's a blessing.
I hope that you guys enjoyed listening to that conversation as much as I had sitting with Dan and talking about it. I've heard a number of those stories and so many more in person as we were hiking through the mountains of Montana one day. But God is working through the sport of wrestling. And if you've been around here enough, and if you know me enough, you know that I'm a big fan of sports. I believe that sports break down walls and barriers and create opportunity for conversations that may never happen otherwise. And so Dan is just living that out and using the sport of wrestling to impact people and impact communities and cultures. And it is a beautiful thing. So if you found these stories interesting, if you want to maybe partner financially with what God is doing through Wrestling for Peace, please check out their website. So wrestlingforpeace.org, I believe it is. I'll put the link down in the bio. If you want to partner financially, click that link and partner financially. If you want to partner in prayer, click that link. Read the stories and see the videos and the faces of what God is doing and who is there, and pray for those people. Like Dan said, we all can do something. And so what can you do? What is it that God is putting in front of you to put your hands to? It may not be wrestling worldwide. It may not be basketball or volleyball. But what does God put in front of you to do? The need is big, but we get to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this world. And so like I've mentioned in the episode, and what their hashtag is everyone wrestles. And so as we're wrestling through life, may we lean in to the Lord and just see what he might have for us to do. So like I said, visit their website and see more. Hear more stories about what God is doing through wrestling. And I'll put a link in the show notes below for where you can buy Dan's book of Finish Strong, the Dan Russell story. Until next time, remember, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord. You are on mission, no matter where you are, whether it's in your backyard, across the street, or around the globe.